It started like any other sleepy Sunday morning. You know, the kind I mean, that quiet of stillness where the biggest ambition is to refill the coffee pot before the second cup turns lukewarm. My wife Liv was sitting on the porch swing with her lemon ginger tea. Same spot she always chose, right by the lavender bush she insisted smelled better after light rain. I had the paper half open in my lap, pretending to read headlines I'd stopped caring about a decade ago and chuckling at Squirrel launching doom mission to rob our bird feeder again. Just a lazy Sunday. Nothing more, nothing less, until a black van skidded up to the curb like we were extras in some budget version of the Jason Bourne movie, and three guys jumped out in tactical vests shouting, HOA compliance enforcement. They did not pose a T-knock. They didn't announce themselves beyond that bark of authority. They just stormed up our driveway, and before I could even ask if they'd lost their damn minds, grabbed my wife off the porch, mug still in hand, and dragged her across the lawn. Here's the part that messed me up the most. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She didn't panic. She just turned her head slightly toward me, gave me that calm, steady look I'd seen 1,000 times when she was fixing the wire or making soup, and wink. That's when I knew deep in my chest in a way that makes your skin go cold, that I had no idea who the hell I'd actually. You ever have one of those moments, the kind where the world tilts, not in some dramatic movie way, but in slow, almost polite shift, makes everything suddenly unfamiliar? That was me standing barefoot on my porch holding a coffee I couldn't taste while my wife got hauled into van by fake cops from fake HOA. Let me backtrack because context matters. We live in Pine Grove Estates, which sounds like pleasant enough name for suburban maze of matching fences, Home Depot flower beds, and mailbox drama. Idipos. That's the kind of place where people write anonymous letters about holiday lights being excessive and where someone once started a petition to ban wind chimes over 3 decibels. The whole place is run by an HOA, and I mean really run, like a neighborhood dictatorship with PowerPoint presentations and weaponized clipboards. The head of this HOA is a woman named Karen. Yes, I know. I wish I were joking. She actually introduces herself as Karen from the HOA, like it's job title you have to bow to. She Karen fined us $75 once because our dog left toy on the porch. Another time she sent us notice about excessive laughter during family barbecue. That's not joke. That's an actual quote. Excessive laughter. We thought it was just harmless power tripping. Annoying, sure, but manageable. Liv, my wife, always seemed unbothered. She ran yoga classes for the neighbors, fixed everybody's thermostats when they shorted out, grew tomatoes like she was training for the Tomato Olympics. She had calm about her, kind of inner quiet that didn't bend to nonsense. So when these guys dragged her off the porch, it didn't make sense. None of it did. I was still halfway in disbelief when the van door slammed shut and they peeled away. And still, that image of her calm wink sat in my head like an unanswered question. That was not a help me wink, that was. Sit tight wink, that was wink from someone who knew more than I did. I stumbled back inside, hard jackhammering, and called the police. The dispatcher's voice was too calm, like maybe she'd already taken call like mine before. When I mentioned HOA enforcement, her tone changed, not panic, but alert. She asked me to stay put. Sir, she said, we've had reports of impersonators in your area. Please don't follow them and don't touch anything. Officers are on the way. Impersonators. What the hell kind of neighborhood is fake HOA cops kidnapping people? And why the hell was my wife so chill about it? I dropped the phone and paced like lunatic. Then something blinked in the corner of my eye. Our smart home hub. One of those wall-mounted systems Liv insisted on installing. Only now it was flashing something I'd never seen before. Pine protocol activated. I tapped the screen. Hidden panel slid open behind the bookshelf in our study. You know the sound a secret compartment makes in a movie. It made that sound. I practically leapt backward like it was going to explode. Inside was a steel case, already open, biometric lock disabled inside, a slim black laptop, a cheap burner phone, and a handwritten envelope with my name on it. I'm not ashamed to admit I hesitated. My hands were shaking. I hadn't seen handwriting that deliberate in a long time. Liv wrote like school teacher. Neat, no wasted loops. I opened the letter. If you're reading this to begin, I've been taken. Don't panic. This is part of the plan. What part of the plan? I read it twice. I know this is shock, but I work for these. I technically retired. Pine Grove is part of an active investigation. The HOA is involved in something bigger than you can imagine. Trust no one. Especially Karen. I sat down right there on the floor, the kind of sit where your knees give out without permission. My wife was Isai, my wife who once cried because our dog chewed her gardening gloves, my wife who hosted potlucks and knitted scarves for the neighbors' babies. And apparently our hoe was Snappos, a tea, just a bunch of nosy power trippers. It was front, For what I had no idea. I turned to the laptop. It came to life like it had been waiting. Facial recognition blinked green, no login screen, no password prompt. It opened file labeled Operation Haunted. I didn't even want to know what the acronym meant. Inside were surveillance photos, maps of the neighborhood with red pins, and dossiers. Real thick, terrifying dossiers. Karen's file alone was the size of church directory. Travel records, payments to private contractors, invoices to security companies based in Nevada that didn't seem to exist outside P.O. Box. One document was titled Contingency Plan, Suburban Lockdown. When I clicked it, live satellite feed opened. There was the van pulling off the main road and down path behind the clubhouse, the same clubhouse Karen claimed was under renovations. I grabbed the burner phone. The letter said, "Call this number if anything goes wrong." It rang once. Mr. Granger. Woman answered. Calm, professional. Yes. Who is this? This is Mallory. I'm with Liv's unit. She's safe for now. We're tracking her. Tracking her? What the hell is going on? Why is the HOA kidnapping people? Well, they're not just in HOA, sir. Karen. Real name Karina Vov. Is under surveillance for laundering money through suburban development zones. Your wife volunteered to embed here, the whole neighborhood's front. I must have gone quiet because she added, backup is en route. Stay inside, and whatever you do, don't let anyone from the HOA near your house. I turned slowly toward the window. Karen was standing on my front lawn, smiling, hands folded neatly, binder in one arm. Two of the same fake officers. Faces blank, cheap tactical vests, flanking her like cosplay rent-a-cops. One of them had Nerf dart stuck to his boot. I kid you not, Mr. Granger. Karen called, sweet as poison. We need to speak about your wife's recent violations. And that, my friend, is the moment something in me snapped. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about porch clutter anymore. This was war. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I stood just behind the curtains, watching Karen on my lawn like she owned it. No, like she was it. That smug smile, that lavender blouse ironed to perfection, the binder she held like it was a legal weapon. She had two of her stooges behind her, same guys who dragged Liv off our porch, only now they were trying to look official with fake patches and two shiny boots. I didn't breathe until she turned and walked away, and even then my lungs refused to believe the air was safe. I locked every door, closed every blind. The smart system chimed with soft, system secured, and for the first time, that voice didn't feel helpful. It felt like warning. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the burner phone. Liv's note crumpled beside me. My brain felt like TV stuck between channels. Flickering static of disbelief and fury. I wasn't angry because she'd lied to me. I was angry because she'd prepared for this and hadn't included me. Like I was the dumb husband who couldn't handle the truth. Like my only job was to sit tight while she played international spy in our backyard. But then again, maybe she knew something about me I didn't, because right now, I wasn't staying put. I opened the steel case again, and the laptop was still running. One document blinking in the corner. Pine Protocol, Tirament activation pending. I clicked it. It opened new window with blinking map, our neighborhood marked with heat sensors, surveillance nodes, digital tags on at least half dozen houses. Next to one was name I recognized. Mrs. Jensen, widow, lived 3 doors down, bakes too many pies. Once yelled at me because my trash cans were rebelliously diagonal. Apparently also part of Liv's unit. There was note in the file. Asset codename Shrubbery. Signal activation point. Garden loop. Garden loop. I pulled up our smart home camera footage and rewound to earlier that morning. And there she was, Mrs. Jensen, watering her garden, except she wasn't watering it, she was moving in pattern. Left bush, right bush, topiary back to rosebud. I didn't get it at first. Then I saw it, she was signaling, looping in sequence, again and again like Morse code for flower lovers. I scribbled note, stuck it under a loose brick in the porch column. An old family trick from my grandfather's Navy days, and waited. Less than an hour later, there was a knock. Not on the door, on the back window. Mrs. Jensen, holding a lemon pie classic cover. She didn't say a word, just tilted her head toward her house. I followed. We didn't speak until she closed her blinds and activated what looked like homemade jammer made out of repurposed humidifier and an old Game Boy. Took you long enough, she said. We were starting to wonder if you were just passive casualty or something more useful. Useful? I repeated, stunned. She smirked. You ever hear of Shrubbery? That's me. Ridiculous name, I know. Blame Liv. She had thing for code names. She led me into what used to be her sewing room. Now it looked like war room. Wall monitors, local security feeds, printed blueprints of the clubhouse, highlighted sections labeled basement retrofit, a tunnel access, a security relay point. She's in the basement. Jensen said calmly, they're holding her beneath the clubhouse. We knew this might happen. The timing, though, faster than we thought. Karen must have gotten wind of something. Or maybe someone panicked. And what the hell is the HOA really? I asked. Jensen looked at me, expression tightening. The HOA is Shell Corporation layered under 6 other dummy companies that trace back to an offer fund in Malta. They launder money through residential fines, fake maintenance contracts, and security subcontractors. Your wife was placed here to infiltrate and expose the whole network. She volunteered. Why didn't she tell me? She didn't want you compromised. If things went sideways, plausible deniability keeps you alive. She paused, but things went sideways harder than expected, which is why you're no longer just bystander. She handed me small flash drive. This contains virus live wrote. Tapos, that'll crash their internal security grid. You need to install it at the uplink point. Let me guess, I muttered. The uplink point is somewhere ridiculous, like behind the damn HOA clubhouse. Worse, she said. Behind the shed next to the tennis court. You know, the one they renovated last month. It's the access point for the entire surveillance hub. Everything Karen watches goes through there first. I took the drive. It felt too light for something so heavy. I'm not trained for this, I admitted. Jensen chuckled. Neither was I when I joined. You think I used to bake pies and monitor encrypted comms at the same time? We learn fast or we disappear. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room watching cameras, listening for anything unusual. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every distant car sounded like backup. I couldn't stop replaying Liv's wink, her calm voice, and the letter. She trusted me, even if she hadn't told me the whole story. And now it was my turn to trust her and act. The next morning, I dressed like I was going to mow the lawn. Hoodie, old sneakers, gardening gloves. I stuffed the flash drive into a pocket and walked around the block twice. The clubhouse was quiet. The tennis shed looked normal. Green paint, some mildew on the siding, and a couple of discarded Gatorade bottles. No guards, no cameras visible. Either they were cocky or they thought no one would dare. I waited until 2 guys smoking near the parking lot wandered off, then slipped behind the shed. The lock was basic pat. I remembered Liv showing me how to pick one once while we watched some old spy thriller. I thought she was just being quirky. Turns out she was teaching me. It clicked open faster than I expected. Inside, wires, racks of blinking hardware, a small terminal exactly as Jensen described. I plugged in the flash drive and watched the lights flicker. The screen blinked green, the soft died down, silence. Their grid was blind. I closed everything up and walked away like nothing happened, just a guy in a hoodie pretending to care about lawn work. But inside, I was buzzing. Back at home, the burner phone vibrated. A message from a secure number. Grid down. Phase 2 in motion. Prepare for contact. I was halfway to responding when Shadow moved outside the window. I ducked, peeked. It wasn't Karen. It was Bob. Grumpy old Bob. The guy who'd once chased kids off his lawn with leaf blower. He gave me a single nod and mouthed midnight. I nodded back, unsure if I was terrified or thrilled. At midnight, I met Bob. Real name Robert Carson, apparently. Former Black Ops guy turned HOA whistleblower. He handed me small comms, earpiece, and muffin. Fuel, we grunted. Together with Jensen, we reviewed the blueprint again. The extraction team would breach through the tunnel system beneath the clubhouse, built years ago under the guise of storm shelter enhancements. Liv had mapped it herself. My job? Create the diversion during the HOA's emergency compliance hearing scheduled for the next day. Surprise meeting to address. Security violations, probably smokescreen to cover Liv's transfer or worse. I would attend. I would play dumb. I would buy time. And when the walls came down, I'd be ready. Not just as husband, but as weapon Karen never expected. Because they took Liv off the porch, thinking they'd weaken the house. They forgot she'd already fortified it from within. And now so had I. The morning of the emergency HOA compliance meeting was the kind of hot that makes your shirt stick to your back before you even opened the door. The sun hadn't even cleared the tops of the pine trees, but the air was already humming with something more than humidity. It felt like trap. I dressed like any concerned suburbanite would. Khakis, polo shirt, clipboard under one arm with few printed out HOA bylaws I hadn't read but planned to wave around like I had. I was supposed to blend in normal. Unthreatening, boring, but my chest was tight, my pulse loud in my ears. It didn't matter how calm I looked on the outside. I knew I was walking into something ugly, something that smelled like rot wrapped in lavender air freshener. The meeting was held inside the clubhouse, which on the outside still looked like a high school home economics project with pastel shutters and a banner that read Unity Through Order. On the inside, it had been gutted and rebuilt into something colder. New flooring, soundproofed walls, an F system that could probably host NATO summit. Karen was at the entrance with her usual polished smile and stack of glossy agendas that looked more like corporate earnings reports, neighborhood updates. She handed me one like pastor handing out communion wafers, but her eyes said something different. Something calculating, Glad to see you here, Mr. Granger, she said smoothly. We were beginning to wonder if you'd taken ill. Just wanted to make sure no one finds me for non-compliant mailbox angle, I replied with a smile that felt too wide. She gave a soft chuckle, but her eyes didn't blink. You always were bit of card. I took a seat near the back, close to the window where I had view of the maintenance shed and the north access road. My clipboard wasn't just for show. It had miniature signal scanner hidden in the spine, courtesy of Mrs. Jensen and Bob, who'd spent the night cobbling it together using parts from an old garage door opener and Bluetooth speaker. I'd scanned the room, about 20 people. Some real neighbors, some not. The two guys from the abduction team were there, now dressed as security consultants. Badges that just said HOA Tactical, like it was Division of Homeland Security. One of them yawned and scratched his neck, revealing faded tattoo that looked suspiciously like unit crest. I didn't recognize it, but it was military. Definitely not Cub Scouts. Then the room dimmed. Karen walked to the podium like she was about to deliver eulogy for common sense. Her heels clicked with purpose. Good morning, Pine Grove, she began, her voice perfect mix of corporate warmth and veiled threat. Today we come together not just as neighbors, but as guardians of shared vision. Community rooted in discipline, in structure, and values. I tuned out most of the speech. I was watching the signals. 2 new pings showed up near the clubhouse basement. Sign the extraction team had entered the tunnel system. I had 12 minutes, maybe less to stall. I raised my hand. Excuse me, I had a question about the budget line items, specifically the $18,000 labeled as emergency auditory dispersal systems. What exactly is that? Karen's smile twitched. It's for crowd control at large events, she answered. Noise management, entirely routine. In the basement? I asked. The room shifted. Few people looked up from their papers. Karen didn't answer immediately. Instead, she adjusted her blouse, smoothed her agenda. That's temporary storage space. Nothing unusual. Her eyes met mine. There was flicker, recognition. She knew I knew, then small chirp in my earpiece. Jensen's voice, low and calm. Team's inside, holding position. You've got 6 minutes. I stood. Actually, I'd like to motion for an immediate review of all budget items above $5,000. This smells like slush fund. One of the goons started to move toward me, hand brushing the inside of his jacket. I held up my clipboard. Isn't transparency part of the HOA charter? Karen nodded to the men, signaling them to back off. We'll allow it, she said through clenched teeth. The room murmured it was working. I was causing friction, confusion, just enough heat to soften the edges. Then the lights flickered. A low thump echoed beneath the floorboards, followed by faint vibration. Barely noticeable to most, but unmistakable to someone who'd been listening for it. Jensen again. They breached the internal door. 2 minutes. Karen stepped away from the podium, grabbed folder, and started to head toward the emergency exit. I cut her off. Leaving so soon? I thought we were guardians of shared vision. She didn't smile this time. Step aside, she said coldly. You're obstructing lawful process. You first, I said, and opened the emergency folder on my clipboard. It contained series of redacted invoices. Printouts from Liv's laptop showing shell companies and offshore accounts. I held them up. You recognize these. That's when the room exploded. Not literally, but close. One of the fake officers lunged. Another neighbor, Priya, who everyone thought just walked dogs for a living, dropped her tote bag and rolled it across the floor. It popped open and out, spilled cloud of thick white vapor. Non-lethal, but enough to send people scrambling. Through the haze, the floor hatch near the podium slammed open. And there she was, Liv, dirt streak, hair tied back, stun baton in one hand, eyes blazing. Miss me, she said. Karen spun, pulling sidearm from her waistband. Liv didn't hesitate. The tin snapped forward, cracked against Karen's wrist, sent the gun flying. Karen tried to run. Liv swept her leg out, dropped her to the ground like a sack of denial. Outside, I could hear tires screeching, yelling, the sound of boots and radios. George, the mailman, was apparently retired signals expert, and he jammed the HOA backup team with spoof fire drill. The real feds were moving in disguised as land skippers with leaf blowers. Karen was zip-tied before she could scream about jurisdiction. The goons didn't fight. They knew it was over. Rest was blur, neighbors coughing through smoke, blinking at the sudden clarity of what had just happened. The real story wouldn't be told, not in the papers. Not on Nextdoor. The official line would be something about financial irregularities and impersonation, but the ones who were there, the ones who saw Liv emerge from beneath the floor like righteous ghosts. They knew, we all knew. Back at home, Liv didn't say much. She collapsed into the porch swing with her tea, still somehow warm. I sat beside her, no words, just the kind of silence that fills space with truth instead of absence. Finally, I asked, how long have you been planning this? She didn't answer right away, just rocked slowly, eyes on the horizon. Then she said, since before we moved here. But the moment I met Karen, I knew this neighborhood was going to need more than weed control. I laughed. It felt strange in my chest, like waking up from long sleep. The message came that night, delivered in an unmarked envelope, slipped under the door. Single line typed in black ink. Neutral ground confirmed. Extraction team debrief in 48 hours. Mission success. No signature, no suit. Just the kind of statement that changes nothing on the surface and everything underneath. And then, just as I was beginning to believe we might finally go back to normal, another car pulled into the driveway next door. The house had been vacant for months, since Ron Karen's deputy disappeared. Out stepped tall woman in mirrored aviators, black boots, and long coat no sane person wears in Georgia heat. She looked around the cul-de-sac, took long breath, and nodded like someone scanning chessboard. Liv stood at the window beside me, arms crossed. She doesn't work for us, she murmured. That's Belarusian on her bag tag. Friend or threat? I asked. Liv smiled. Not yet. But we should probably dust off the flamingos. And just like that, the fight wasn't over. It had only changed shape. The thing about peace is that it never arrives quietly. It shows up disguised as routine. Kids on scooters. Sprinkler kicking on too early. Neighbor waving while walking their dog. That's how it was the morning after the takedown. The clubhouse sat undisturbed. Karen and her clipboard cult were gone, and the whole website had quietly updated to read. Under reconstruction, no one asked questions, not the kind that mattered. They just nodded more cautiously, mowed their lawn straighter, and avoided eye contact a little too quickly. But behind those hedges, behind the trim facades and porch flags, there was tension in the air. Something unspoken that smelled like unfinished business. The woman who moved into Ron's old house had been there less than 24 hours, and already the neighborhood felt off. She didn't unpack, just observe. She stood by her car for long stretches, talking into her sleeve, her pace while fake checking her mailbox 5 times an hour. Liv called her. Icebreaker, as joke, said she dressed like she was allergic to sunlight and small talk. But it wasn't funny, not really, because when you've spent months watching and HOA double as an international crime front, you learn to spot trouble before it wears name tag. Liv didn't go back into hiding. If anything, she became more visible. Hosting community yoga again, replanting the herb garden that got trampled during the chaos. But I noticed the way she positioned her mat, always facing the street, the way she lingered by the hedges, planting basil while angling small mirror just enough to catch reflections off icebreaker's upper window. She wasn't pretending to be normal. She was performing it loudly, strategically, and I followed her lead. I fixed the porch swing, installed new mailbox, added more flamingos, because apparently now they were symbolic. It was Liv's idea to host a block meeting, not federal debrief, not Isaias Citrep, real meeting with real neighbors. The ones who got fined for mismatched mulch or for having a wreath up past the approved holiday window, the ones who'd lived through the HOA's quiet tyranny and didn't even know they were captives. We hosted it in our backyard. No sign-in sheet, no formal agenda, just coolers of lemonade, folding chairs, and an unspoken readiness. People came. Not everyone, but enough. The elderly couple who never opened their curtains, the family that had been cited for trampoline visible from the road, even Bob, who up until now had only communicated through grunts and property line disputes. Liv stood on the porch with her hands in her pockets. She didn't clear her throat, didn't tap wine glass. She just waited until the buzz died down and then spoke plain and steady. You've all seen what happened, she said. Some of you were closer to it than you realized. Some of you maybe didn't want to know. But the truth is our HOA was being used. The board was compromised. And now that the faces have changed, the machine behind it might still be turning. No, interrupted. Even the kids stopped tossing their football and watched. We've confirmed that new leadership is being installed from the outside. No election, no transparency. Just another clipboard, another suit, another directive disguised as community value. She stepped down and handed out copies of documents. Fines, invoices, few partially redacted memos she managed to salvage from the clubhouse servers. We're not forming rebellion, she added. We're forming accountability. That night we didn't sleep, not from stress, but ideas, plans, possibilities. Shrubbery showed up with George and Priya. Bob brought blueprints, actual blueprints, of Pine Grove's original utility tunnels. We weren't building resistance, we were designing oversight. We set up motion sensors disguised as bird feeders, rewired sprinkler systems to act as signal repeaters. We hid walkie-talkie nodes inside yard gnomes and fake rock decor. It was less military op and more Home Depot meets Isai, but it worked. We called it Phase 4, the home front rebuild. Within 3 days, we'd remapped the entire neighborhood. Icebreaker's house got tagged with 3 surveillance points, one aimed at her garage, one on the west gutter, one just barely catching the upstairs bedroom window where she occasionally stood, arms crossed, staring back like she already knew. But she didn't act. Not yet, which made it worse, like she was waiting for something or someone. Then came the invite. An embossed envelope slid into every mailbox. Inside, formal invitation to the Pine Grove reunification ceremony. Full HOA reinstatement gala, dress code, business casual or EP required, location, clubhouse, date, Saturday, 6 a.m. Liv read it once and muttered, "They're testing the waters." Seeing who still follows orders, "Are we going?" I asked. "Of course," she said, "but not to celebrate. We planned for 5 days, rebuilt communications relay using Pria's dog treat tins and repurposed solar lights. Bob installed a pressure-activated ink misting system across the clubhouse entrance. Non-toxic, yet reactive, designed to mark anyone leaving through that path with invisible dye we could track later. Jensen upgraded the porch camera into full infrared unit. I handled the microphone, the podium one. See, we learned Karen had used it to communicate with her remote contacts. There was a button beneath the stand, one press, and it sent pulse. That pulse now triggered something else entirely. Playback loop of her own words, not her speeches, her intercepted calls, her orders, her plans. Saturday came. The neighborhood looked like a wedding reception had crashed into a real estate open house, tablecloths, lawn games, finger foods on toothpicks. Icebreaker arrived in all black, no plus one took a corner seat and didn't touch the wine. Liv wore denim and sandals. I wore my old Marine cap. Not a statement. Its warning. The room filled quickly. People mingled, smiled, pretended. Ted, the new Hope president, took the stage. His haircut alone said, "Well, I know someone in private security," and his speech was full of empty words, a community, order, shared future. Then he reached under the podium. Click, his own voice filled the air. "If they don't comply, we push them out quietly, remove the blockers, reset control, silence, not breath in the room." Then someone coughed. Someone else said, "What the hell was that?" Ted froze, tried to smile. Prank, he claimed. Obviously some leftover file. He stepped back, right into the ink grid. The system triggered, light hiss. He staggered, now glowing faintly under UV. Pink neon like suburban shame in powder form. He ran, out the door, through the yard, past the flamingos. They detonated on cue, not exploded. Just burst with color-coded smoke, each bird time, each one misting him in bright pink waves. From the sky, he looked like a dotted map of failure. The video hit the neighborhood group chat before he reached the street. We didn't cheer, we didn't celebrate, we just watched. That night, Liv leaned against the porch rail, the kids down the block lit sparklers. Someone put on music. Bob grilled. George waved from his bike. Shrubbery passed around root beer floats. "This doesn't end," I said quietly. "More, another HOA, another name, another icebreaker." Liv nodded. "But now they know. We don't sit quiet anymore. We don't nod and pay the fine. We ask, we watch, we act." I took her hand. The porch light glowed faintly above us. Somewhere Flamingo blinked its solar eyes. They could come back, but this time we'd be ready. The thing about winning battle is that you don't always realize you're still in war. For a few weeks, life in Pine Grove felt deceptively quiet. No surprise meetings, no clipboard vigilantes measuring our lawns with tape. Just the occasional bake sale, a suspiciously cheerful newsletter from the Transition Committee, and the New Hope president, Ted, now universally referred to as Pink, missed Ted thanks to his abrupt, color-coded exit. His SUV hadn't been seen since. His mailbox sat empty, and a house he'd briefly claimed remained dark. Liv called it ghost with mortgage. But even with Ted gone and Karen in federal custody, something lingered. Kind of residue. Not exactly, not paranoia. Awareness, the way soldier still listens for the click of tripwire long after the battlefield's been cleared. And then one Saturday morning, the mailman handed us a letter he probably shouldn't have. It wasn't addressed to us. No return address, just cream envelope, sealed in wax. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 7 words typed in the center. "You've disrupted the sequence. Protocol would just..." No name, no logo, just that. I watched Liv read it twice. Then she folded it once, set it on fire in the grill, and said, "They're regrouping." The next few days, we got quiet. Not the hiding kind of quiet, the listening kind. The whole neighborhood seemed to pick up the rhythm. People we'd once thought were just quirky or standoffish started showing up with casseroles and coded updates. Shrubbery installed thermal scanner in the bird bath. George rerouted our garbage pickup sensors into pattern recognition filter. Priya ran a sweep of the neighborhood-wide grid and flagged 2 new ghost networks with encrypted naming conventions. The woman across the street, who used to spend her afternoon yelling at squirrels, built kinetic mesh net out of tomato cages and copper wiring that disrupted low-frequency drones. She called it the Scarecrow. Liv smiled for the first time in days. We're not just residents anymore, she said. We're cells. Still, I could feel the tide shifting, not just from the outside. From within, Liv was getting restless. Not paranoid, but distant, distracted. Her eyes would follow movement that wasn't there. Her fingers hovered near her phone a little too often. She started carrying her old ID badge again, tucked inside the lining of her hoodie like from another life. I asked her one night if she was thinking about leaving, about reactivating fully. She didn't answer, just whispered, they don't let you go, they let you cool. Then the neighborhood got new announcement, town hall, scheduled by temporary oversight executive from the Regional Residential Authority, which near as we could tell was made up government-sounding agency funded by the same shell corporations Karen had used. The flyer listed new proposed guidelines for operational harmony, curfews for lawn tools, mandatory drone inspections, uniform color coding for porch furniture. It read like satire, it read like control. Liv didn't laugh when she read it. She folded it, placed it under the same loose floorboard where her original Isai gear had been hidden, and looked me in the eye. This isn't new HOA, she said. It's data reclamation op. They're trying to normalize surveillance again. They just changed the name. We didn't wait for approval. We responded the only way we knew how. With theater the day of the town hall, we launched what Liv dubbed Operation Rewilding. Everyone wore the wrong colors. Every porch had mismatched chairs, solar lights, oversized gnomes, tacky banners, clashing birdhouses. The cul-de-sac looked like a garage sale mirrored a Mardi Gras parade. I spray-painted our driveway with the words, "Order requires consent." George brought out bubble machine. Priya dressed her poodle in tactical pink camo. Even Bob wore tie-dye shirt that read, "Decentralize or die." It was beautiful chaos, but beneath it every sprinkler was armed with sensor trigger. Every garden ornament had dual function, and every set of holiday lights was wired for infrared disruption. The town hall didn't go well. The new rep, some guy named Caldwell in pressed shirt and perfect teeth, stood on the clubhouse stage and tried to smile through the weirdness. This community has proud legacy of cohesion, he said. Our goal is not to control, but to guide. He didn't get past slide 3 before the projector failed. On purpose. Bob had swapped the HDMI line with looped reel of old Karen's speeches layered with distorted numbers and satellite coordinates. Caldwell tried to recover, only to be cut off by George's. The accidental feedback looped through the microphone. When Liv finally stood up, no one stopped her. She didn't yell. She didn't posture. She just said, "We remember, and we're watching back." Caldwell left the meeting early. The SUV was marked with 5 different surveillance tags by the time he hit the main road. He never came back, but something else did. 2 nights later, the streetlights went dark for 43 seconds, long enough for 2 vehicles to enter the neighborhood, circle the cul-de-sac, and exit. Plates. No visible drivers. Just tinted windows and faint signal trays. Our network caught the frequency. It was government adjacent. Not official. But close enough. Liv didn't sleep that night. She stayed on the porch until sunrise, fingers wrapped around her old field notebook like it was Lifeline. They're testing soft responses, she told me, measuring resistance, calibrating threat tolerance. We've made them nervous. It would have been easy to escalate, to fight with force, but that's not how you hold ground in suburbia. You don't win by overpowering. You win by outlasting. So we live in loudly. Honestly, we turned our homes into archives, our lawns into signals, our conversations into warnings, and slowly the neighborhood transformed. Not into a fortress, into something better, a living memory, a place that could not forget what had been done, and more importantly, a place that refused to pretend it hadn't happened. Eventually, we received one last letter, delivered through an old payphone channel Liv had once used in Cairo. No name, no header, just one line. Pine Grove has been marked, neutral ground, no further operations authorized. Liv stared at it for a long time. Then she tucked it behind the flamingo trophy on our mantel right next to a photo of us taken the first week we'd moved in. Before any of this started, before the van, before the files, before I knew my wife could field strip weapon faster than I could make coffee. I asked her what it meant. "It means they're done," she said, "at least for now." Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "But it also means they think we're too loud to control." She smiled, not with her mouth, with her eyes. The next morning, I got nominated as HOA president. Not the fake kind, the actual one. It wasn't Jove. I checked the bylaws. Apparently, saving your neighborhood from surveillance counts as demonstrated leadership. I accepted under one condition. that the charter be rewritten from scratch, starting with clause banning any future HOA president from possessing tactical geared surveillance drones or weaponized flamingos. That got standing ovation. Liv stood in the back and clapped once, slow and deliberate. That was enough. We held our first real HOA meeting week later. We called it Lawn Day Liberation. Everyone brought out their worst decorations: inflatable dinosaurs, disco ball birdhouses. Someone installed a bubble machine shaped like a giant frog. There were no fines, no citations, just boats, laughter, stories. And one rule: no one leaves scared. And as the sun dipped low, painting the porch in amber, I realized something I hadn't felt in months. Not just peace, not just relief, belonging, not because we'd won, but because we'd earned it. Together, and no clipboard, no badge, no black SUV could ever take that back. Not from this porch, not ever again.